Good evening and welcome to Tripping on Legends. My name is Christopher Balzano.
And my name is Ella Balzano.
And we are your co-hosts every other week for this absolutely fantastic journey into the haunted folklore of Florida. But, that's kind of the specialty of Tripping on Legends. But lately, especially because we haven't been able to get out on the field because of wacky family obligations and of course, the pandemic. We've also been tackling different types of folklore that exists throughout the internet, throughout cultures, as well as kind of just talking about some topics. We are featured here every Tuesday night. If you are listening to this on podcast and you want to get involved, we have an amazing chat room going. We have all these other kind of features that you get when you are interacting with us live. We are on midnight.fm.
Where it's always midnight.
As well as on IGTV at Spooky Tripping. And of course, the live feed is shown in its entirety with the chat room on our Facebook page, facebook.com/trippingonlegends, which is actually shown through mine and then shared to the Tripping on Legends website. So you can, if you're a friend of mine, you get it. But even if you don't like me and you just like the show, you can still completely get it by going to Tripping on Legends. Ella, do you have Facebook?
No.
Why don't you have Facebook? Or do you not have Facebook?
Because I'm not a middle-aged white woman.
Yeah, because it's an old person thing, right?
Yes.
So
you guys don't even let me have Instagram.
Do you have a hidden Instagram that your mom and dad don't know about?
No.
No. Okay, that's okay. You don't have any followers. Anyway. Although you've got a successful TikTok, and we talked last episode. 25. You were on about bringing the TikTok more to the front and actually using the Tripping on Legends TikTok. So that's something that we're planning on doing pretty soon, right? And we'll be bringing a 15-second legend a day.
Oh, you can actually do 60 seconds.
Okay, 60 seconds. That puts a lot more pressure on me to get them done. So remember, you got to speak into the mic, which is over here. So you're going to have to sit up a little bit. We are exploring something unusual tonight. And of course, as always, you can feel free to call in at 813-418-6822. And I'm hoping that some people get involved tonight because definitely in the second part of the show tonight, I think that there's a lot that other people can bring to what we're doing because I am by no means an expert in this part of things. So I'm hoping that someone can maybe clarify some things. I did research on it, which is what I do, but I do feel that there is more information out there. But the first thing that I wanted to explore, because we were in an interesting week. We're coming off of Halloween. How was your Halloween?
It was fine.
It was fine? What did you do? Anything interesting?
Well, you were there.
Well, I was there for part of it. I wasn't there.
I went to Edison Mall with my friend. It was terrible. Don't go to Edison Mall. To trick or treat. And then when we got home, I ate dinner. And I went out to the Cultural Park Theater house with my dad. And it was more like a circus than a haunted house. There was like a spooky kind of film, and then like all of the actors were kind of stupid. They were like hee hee every second. And then the only scary part, the scary film thingy, was interrupted by babies crying.
Yeah.
Then the screen rose. A bunch of people came out in white sheets with the eyes cut out.
We don't want to offend any people, any of our supporters who are also supporters of the Cultural Park Theater, but it was lame. These people came out.
And they started dancing to Ghostbusters.
Yeah, they came out in literally sheets or tablecloths with eyes poked out and did a little dance. And it's fine. Like, we went there and then we did a trunk or treat that was there. And Ella does a lot of drama there and does a lot of acting there. And so it was good to support your local theater, which is kind of why we did it. And not even a scary movie. We didn't even end up watching a scary movie. We were going to watch Highlander because Sean Connery had died, which is not spooky, but then you guys all punked out on me.
Well, I didn't punk out on you. One, I didn't want to watch Highlander. Two, we went to the haunted house instead. And three, I watched Nightmare Before Christmas instead.
That's true.
Which is even better. Which is a scary movie.
So, it was one of those Halloweens, and I bring it up not for that banter that most people actually don't enjoy that much, but kind of this raised expectation of Halloween and the Halloween season, and how what we do has to be spooky and has to be scary. We talked about that in the folklorist versus the storytell episode, and I felt that overall this was a really not spooky Halloween. Like, I wasn't scared. We didn't do anything. The scariest thing was just how bad those dancers were dancing to Ghostbusters in their white sheets.
And for some reason, Harley Quinn and Joker came down?
Yeah, not scary. Harley Quinn and Joker, not scary, although if that's your relationship goal, then I guess it would be. But then we have this week. And this is a really odd week because we have two big things.
Sorry.
There we go. Big things, occasions, holidays, if you will, or at least like monumental things that happen this week. And I'm not talking about your mom getting married. But I am talking about, we have
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day, and then what's at the end of the week? On Friday, the 13th. So it's interesting because when I generate these ideas, they come to me, right? What an episode is going to be. Rarely is it a situation where I know in advance, like on Friday, what I'm going to be doing on the show on Tuesday. And I know it kills my producers at midnight.fm. You're supposed to say where it's always midnight.
Where it's always midnight.
But I, sometimes they just come to me. And yesterday, I got this idea because of Friday the 13th and because of what we do and the aura behind it, especially coming off of Halloween. And everyone thinks it's some kind of weird, like weird beyond weird of Friday the 13th this year because of all the craziness. That it would be a good opportunity for us to explore numbers and kind of the haunted folklore and the folklore behind certain numbers, right? And as I was doing that, I came across probably the most, it's in the top 5 most famous numbers. So guess what it is?
666.
No.
3.
No.
13.
No. 1111. Oh, and as I was exploring 1111, I came across the true meaning of Veterans Day, or the placement of Veterans Day.
How do those connect?
I don't know. What's tomorrow's date?
11/11.
Oh, so why is then? So this is like going to be a little bit of a history lesson for you. Why then is it so important? Why is it crucial? Why did they actually make a law to make it 11/11 after they tried to change it once? I think in the 60s they changed it, or the 80s they changed the date of it, and a new law was made to make it maintain being 11/11. So, do you have any idea why whatsoever?
To wish the soldiers good luck.
Okay, what do you mean? So 11/11 to you is a good luck thing?
Yeah, it's like nowadays whenever you see that it's 11/11, you go, oh, 11/11, make a wish, like that kind of thing. But like since like the date is 11/11, it's giving the veterans or the soldiers who are currently in war good luck to fighting a war.
So there's some kind of connection between 11/11 and good luck.
Yes.
Okay, which is true, and we're gonna get into that. Also, it's one of the 11/11 is, and we're gonna get into this a lot more later, is one of the numbers of to figure out a sign or to get a sign of a message from the dead. And one of the messages and one of the dead that we receive messages from often, especially things like a crisis apparition, are soldiers who have passed. Although Veterans Day is not just for soldiers who have passed, but for soldiers who are living. So we want to start off by wishing Happy Veterans Day to all of the soldiers who have fought for this country.
And they're currently fighting.
And who are currently fighting as well. So 11/11/1918. the peace treaty was signed that ended World War I. 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour was when the treaty was signed, ending World War I, the war that was supposed to be the war to end all wars.
That sure didn't work.
No, it really didn't. I totally get this word wrong, how to pronounce it all the time, and so officially the next year, which was 11/11/1919, so that's, once again, like, we're going to be talking a lot about numbers tonight, that was Armistice Day, which means the end of a war, like putting your arms down, which was then changed into Veterans Day.
Legally cannot do that without consent. Legally cannot fight you in a war without consent.
I'm not.
So
what you have is that's 11/11 actually marks the day, and 11/11 is one of the most significant, like, creepy numbers or significant power numbers. If you have a story about power numbers, or if you know more about numerology as we get into that, or if you have kind of a veteran ghost story to kind of fit in with these first ones we're going to tell, the number is 813-418-6822. And Lily, I completely know who you are. I just didn't want to interrupt what I was saying. So you're not lost on me, trust me. I'm glad you're in for the show tonight. We have a problem with veterans in this country. And we have a certain level of, I guess we can call it survivor's guilt. We've talked about before, this idea of so much of folklore has to do with what we call white man's guilt, right? So we discovered that when we were talking about race relations between African Americans and whites, and how that leads to some of the ghosts that we've been uncovering lately. Spring Hill is a great example of that. Even the Swamp Witch, where we went with handprints on the car.
Yes,
yep.
That one.
And of course, we've talked about it in terms of Native American relations, and how many ghost stories that we've covered have to do with Native Americans. And a lot of that springs from this idea that we've done something wrong. So there could be a mystical connection. There could be an actual Native American ghost, or it could be an African American ghost. But the background stories that we create for them are a reflection of our own guilt, right? That we've done something wrong. And I think that really carries over into our veterans. So we have, in Turbulent Legends, we've covered several really big cases that the origin of them are veterans who are, in all of the stories, they're veterans who have been wronged somehow, right? So obviously we have Fort DeSoto, and that's a base, right? So those are supposed to have in Fort King. Those are places that are supposed to be haunted by soldiers because soldiers have died there. Active soldiers have died there. The Rafe Memorial at Oak Ridge Cemetery.
Oh, the Rafe.
Right? Can you think of any of the other ones we've covered where the origin story is a soldier?
I don't remember what it's called, but it was somewhere in Arcadia.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the Royal Fleet or something.
Well, that's the race.
The race.
That's the race, yeah.
Oops.
And British people don't count.
British people don't count. I love it when I try to think of things.
I know, and I think some of the, well, I know at least one of these you've been to. All three of the ones that I'm thinking of all involve soldiers coming home and committing suicide.
Mayaka.
Excellent, good. Do you remember the story of Mayaka?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that some people, when they came home from Vietnam, they were so traumatized by, like, what they had seen in the war and stuff, that they would go to the Canopy Bridge in Mayaka,
I always forget the name of that. Nice job.
and they would hang themselves off the bridge, and it said that, like, you can hear them like crying or something, or like the bridge will sway and you can hear them. But also it said that there's a bunch of people who like normal people, and then they go to the top or something, and they disappear. Like nobody ever sees them again.
Yeah.
Like they watch them go to the top, but they just disappear.
So the folklore of it, and we busted that, if you will, because we proved that the structure wasn't even around when people were coming home from Vietnam. That the structure itself is actually pretty recent, and therefore can't be a cemetery, can't be a suicide spot for veterans, right? But the story goes, just to kind of clarify, because you've got a really good handle on it. A soldier came home and was suffering from PTSD and committed suicide by jumping from the Canopy Bridge.
Jumping or hanging?
No, it's okay.
It's both.
And then, after he was successful, it became a place where other Vietnam veterans would come from across the country to hang themselves or jump from the Canopy Bridge. So it became this symbol of disillusionment after the Vietnam War, and this place where veterans would meet other veterans, kind of like the island of, or the Japanese forest where people commit suicide.
Yeah.
There are these cliffs in England
Logan Paul.
where have to do it, and it's similar in Sarasota, although it never happened. The bridge wasn't in existence. This Canopy Bridge was not in existence until recently, and so therefore there were no suicides there, and there's no documented suicides there anyway. And jumping from the bridge, hanging yourself, maybe you could kill yourself, but jumping from the bridge you couldn't.
It's like you go up like 2 flights, and then there's the bridge right there. Like,
yeah, it's scary.
You might break a few bones, but like,
I mean, maybe from the top, because I mean, if you've seen the videos of me and Mayaka,
Dad
when
was
we get to
peeing his pants.
yeah, when we get to the top, I'm pretty scared. Lily, everything you're saying is amazing. There's also a similar story in the Oviedo Lights. So one of the stories, and probably the most popular origin story for a whole bunch of different hauntings, is the first guy committed suicide after coming home from World War II. And when he did that, he had the same kind of feelings, the same kind of emotions, went to the bridge and committed suicide. And his ghost was stuck there at that bridge. It can't leave because he committed suicide. And since then, he has been attacking other people. So essentially what happens is he's the light, and he's the first ghost light, and someone noticed it, and then that made him take their life, right? And then they also became a ghost light in Oviedo. And then those two stalked another person, and those two stalked another person. But until you have this, dozens of lights that people see in Oviedo, although it all stems from that one suicide, the initial suicide. A very similar story in Lady Lake, or at least the same origin. Guy comes home from the war, and this is the same backstory as the first one. The guy comes back from war to find that the woman he loved, the woman he was devoted to, has married another man. Or is planning to marry another man.
Man.
This is one of several different background stories for Julia. And he kills her.
Oh. Okay.
Okay? She's walking on that road, he kills her, and then he kills himself. And that's why the ghost of Julia is still stuck on that stretch of road. The road where she was killed. And they believe she's in white because it symbolizes her wedding that they never actually had, like that she's actually in a wedding dress. Oh, so if you've heard other stories like that, totally feel free to call them in or to write them in the chat room. But they all suffer from survivor's guilt. You know, this idea that we're not doing enough for our veterans. There are some stories in cemeteries in Southwest Florida. I'm sorry, not Southwest Florida, Central Florida, that involve, for example, like Union soldiers buried next to Confederate soldiers, and so their souls can't find rest because they hate each other. Or of a single Confederate soldier. I'm trying to remember the name. It's not Umatilla, but there's a guy who is guarding the cemetery against all Northerners and all people from the Union because they have no right to be in a Confederate cemetery. I think the theme of them are all pretty similar. And that theme is, I know this is the boring part for you. This is the part where I get analytical, so you can take a nap. Enjoy your sleepy time tea. I'm taking the mic completely my own.
Okay.
The idea of it is that there's a certain level of guilt we have from our veterans, right? The idea that they have died for something or fought for something and then later die for something. Because in all these stories, the guys survive, right? The guys survive the war and they come back, and what is at home is what kills them. You can DJ this, though. You can focus that on me. Home kills them, not what they suffered in the war, not directly, indirectly. They survive the battles. They survive the gunfire. They survive the nights alone. They survive being away from home, and somehow they can't reconnect with the world that they're from. And that causes them to kill themselves, to kill other people, and we're left with this idea that we do not treat our veterans right. That we allow them to fall between the cracks. The numbers, and I don't know the numbers, I'm sure someone here will post them for me. The number of suicides from veterans every day in this country is horrific. And part of that has to do with mental health questions that arise after they come home. Part of it has to do with not being able to adjust to things. Part of it has to do with the act of war kind of double tapping psychological problems they might have already had. That feeling that you give yourself and you come back and no one cared. Or you come back and there's a feeling of emptiness. And that's not them, right? All three of the stories I just identified are all fake stories. They're all stories that are not verifiable. Instead, there's a ghost there, and we apply our own sadness over the way that we treat our veterans, but also this fear that they'll come back to get their recognition one way or another. And we all fly our flags on Veterans Day. Schools don't have off on Veterans Day anymore, right? The only reason why my kids were going to be off tomorrow was kind of a loophole where they schedule hurricane makeup days to coincide with holidays that we're not really supposed to celebrate anymore. One of them being Veterans Day.
Yeah, because I think we were originally supposed to have off, but Ida said hello.
Yeah.
And they popped in out of nowhere, so.
Yeah, like they originally supposed to have tomorrow off as kind of a loophole, and then they ended up 2 days before having a hurricane day because of a storm that hit Florida, and they're not having it. They're not going. So schools don't acknowledge it anymore. You know, we have Memorial Day, we have Veterans Day, you know, we have these, and obviously right now is more patriotic than, let's say, 10, 20 years ago. When Memorial Day and Veterans Day were, I would say, less celebrated than they are now. Like, we acknowledge our veterans much more now. Social media does a really great job of pulling that and reminding people of that and allowing us a platform to say that stuff. But when I was growing up, it was like, oh yeah, it's Veterans Day. Oh yeah, I guess that's a thing. That negligence, I think, leads to a lot of these origin stories and urban legends. Jeremy, I got it right, maybe, said, I saw an episode of A Haunting where it was a family in Florida, lived near an old cemetery, and a Confederate soldier's ghost followed them home and was terrorizing them at night. He would appear in their mirror and climb out of it. That's horrific.
Oh my god.
I would love to find. I'm gonna have to find that. I think it's a haunting in Florida, right? Or is it just
Whoa, Dad. Whoa.
before it was? No, the TV show is called A Haunting.
No, look. Where's there? It says FL. It's Florida.
Yeah. She doesn't understand what I mean. Because they had a haunting in Connecticut, a haunting in Georgia, and I think they had one more. So I'm not sure if it's just an episode of The Haunting or specifically a haunting in Florida. I'll have to check that out. Jeremy, if you know, then you can totally let me know. But that is that. Okay, so we always have to assume that those shows are talking about real hauntings and not necessarily folklore, because we want to imagine that they are truthful and presenting evidence or presenting cases that are real. But I think that you find a lot of that in Florida. I think you find a lot of Confederate soldiers, and most of them are confined to cemeteries. So that's a really interesting one, and I totally have to find that episode, and I want to follow up on that case. So thank you, Jeremy, for that. But there you go. Like that's the first part of this is this idea that, and it's not just in Florida. There are cases all across the United States where these suicides that are linked because of that, right? Because of this horrific negligence that we have, bring about these hauntings. And they have everything to do with how we feel we treat our veterans and less about these actual soldiers. So now I want to switch to numbers.
Okay.
So which number, because 1111 is kind of the spark of this part of it. Stop playing with your Mothman. What are the numbers that you think are like the biggies? All right. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna do a numbered list. I'm gonna have you do what do you think are the top 5 creepy numbers, and you guys in the chat can share what you think they are as well. So the top 5 numbers that have mythical or urban legend and spiritual meanings. Go.
666. 1111. 3. 777.
Or 7 in general, right?
7 in general, yeah. What's one more?
No. It's kind of like what we were talking about.
13.
13. So let me ask you. We really need to get 2 mics and a mixer. I have the mixer. Your mixer, I stole.
My mixer, you stole.
Why do you think Friday the 13th is such a cursed, spooky, unlucky number?
Jason Voorhees.
Okay, so
that's all I have to say.
All you have to say is Jason. So you don't think it precedes that at all? I mean, keep in mind, Jason Voorhees, you're talking 1980. 1980 might as well be 1863 to you, because it's ancient history, right? It's like 40 years ago. Dad was only 5. It's like ancient history, right? But why do you think Jason? Oh, I should have worn my Camp Crystal Lake shirt instead for Friday the 13th. Oh, why do you think? Why do you think so?
Well, like the whole thing happened on Friday the 13th, right? I haven't actually watched it though. But...
No, nor will you under my roof.
What the heck, man?
It's just killing. It's not even like it's scary. It's just killing.
But it's like Jason Voorhees, I think, maybe since he's like pretty much undefeatable.
Yeah.
He creates this sense of like terror in people.
Yeah.
So they think like, oh no, it's Friday the 13th. Jason Voorhees is gonna come kill my family.
And where does the Friday the 13th come from in the movie? Do you know?
No, because I haven't watched the movie.
So, if I'm not mistaken, and people can totally correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure it comes from that was his birthday. His birthday was on the 13th, and it just happened to fall on Friday the 13th, the year that his mother started killing people. Spoilers to Ella.
Oh my gosh.
In the original movie, it's not Jason who is the killer, but his mother. So disappointment. No.
Well, I know that.
There's no hockey mask.
I know
There's
that
no...
about it. I know that about it.
Oh, you did?
I know.
Spoilers. Okay. So I'm gonna have. Let's see if you can. This is my informational thing. Let's see if you can pronounce that word.
The whole word?
Yeah, I kind of broke it up a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. I can actually pronounce Phantom and Jeremy.
I would agree, Jess. It's not scary. It's just killing.
I keep like mistaking the hyphens for actual words. Okay. Paris, Kevidel, Katria, Ophobia.
There's no O in there. Ophobia. You made it Irish.
Ophobia.
Para,
Ophobia.
sketiv, ketriophobia.
Sketiv. That's Irish.
Skepvid.
Skevid.
That is fear of Friday the 13th.
Because I thought that was an L.
No, that's like a break up the word.
I hate you. I hate your
I
handwriting
hate you more.
so much.
I hate your handwriting.
I would have been able to do that.
And how about this word right here?
Can't even read that. Triskaidekaphobia.
So that's fear of the number 13. So
yeah, I got it.
This
First try.
No, you really didn't. It's That's
what I said.
Triskaidekaphobia.
That's what I said.
I'm totally getting it. Triskaideka, whatever it is.
You're butchering it.
It's 3 plus 10, so it's triskaideka or something like that. Anyway, it is fear of Friday the 13th and fear of the number 13, which are both legitimate fears that people have. They are legitimate. Are you raising your hand?
Yes.
We're not in class. Go ahead.
You're in the middle of a sentence. And I don't know.
All right, go ahead.
In a book that I read, in a book series I read called The Magic Misfits, I'm sure you've heard of it. In every single, I read it in front of you. But like in each of the 4 books, he like crosses out the number 13, like the chapter 13. He goes, "This is bad luck. We don't want that, man. We're not putting that on. We're not putting that on chapter 13."
I gotcha. And that is a very common thing. So I'll fast forward to that part of it. I have to put my arm here when I talk. Sorry, but it's okay because this is kind of the me with you interjecting part.
Can you hand my book over?
This book?
It's that one.
Okay. So to what Ella was saying, there is a pretty strong belief that the number 13 is cursed and haunted. This was out of a research study in North Carolina. 80% of the high rises in the United States have no 13th floor. It goes from 12 to 14. There is no 13th floor.
That's because like.
Okay, we'll get to that. You can
Pulling
bring
out
that
my
up.
Death
Yep.
Note.
Yeah, totally. That's why I had you on. There are many, and they said the vast majority was what the research found out. So they didn't give a number. The vast majority of hotels, airports, especially luxury hotels, they do not have a gate 13. They do not have room 13, in addition to skipping the whole floor 13 if it's a big one. But there is a genuine feeling that you need to leave that out. And it seems to be a Western idea. So in other words, it's not so much in like in the Middle East or in the East, in Asia, places like that. Africa, although it does. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the origins of the fear of the number 13. Can you give me one lucky number 13? What is something that has 13 people in it that you would consider lucky? There were not 13.
Really?
No.
Okay.
She is gonna kick herself. You think of what 13? There are 13 of them, while I give these ones that are not good. Okay. So it says one of the earliest things they say it dates back to the Code of Hammurabi. You know who Hammurabi is?
Yes.
What is he? Oh, really? Good. Go ahead. What is he?
I don't know.
All right, beautiful. So he's Egyptian, I believe, isn't he? They said that he wrote his code, right? The Hammurabi Code, which was to some degree kind of used and brought into the modern world. Like in other words, it was some of these laws are kind of like the first laws that are then incorporated into all these other societies that follow. There's no 13th law. He skipped the 13th law, and so at that point, people started to say that it was haunted, that it was cursed somehow, and that's actually not a real thing because the codes weren't numbered. And then later on, when someone was translating them, when Western culture was translating them, they translated them and they forgot the number 13 by accident. It was a clerical error. Or was it? What? Stop raising your hand. What?
Two things.
Yeah.
Like Cam D said, Baker's Dozen.
Okay, I like that.
Is that the one that you were talking about?
Not at all, but I love a Baker's Dozen.
There are 13 books in a series of unfortunate events.
Are there really?
There are.
Okay, that's obviously intentional because he is just the kind of person to do that. Okay, so he was Babylonian. We're going to talk about Babylonians and Sumerians tonight. So we've got the entire Ghostbuster fleet.
Yeah, we do.
So he was not Egyptian, he was Babylonian. So the next thing is the Greeks.
Like what is?
His name is Hesiod, right? And he mentions it, right? He mentions the fact in what's like essentially like the Farmer's Almanac for Greece or for Greek culture. He says that you never plant anything on the 13th day after the moon, after a full moon. That's guaranteed. It doesn't say why, it doesn't give a reason for it, but at least it establishes that at least even the Greeks had this idea. And a lot of it has to do with house guests.
What has 13? Cabins at Camp Half-Blood.
Okay, so wait. She's so close to getting the answer right. Why are there 13 cabins at Camp Half-Blood?
Well, it's, you cover your mouth! Because it's Zeus, Hera, Demeter, Poseidon, Ares, Athena, Apollo, Hephaestus, Artemis, sorry. Artemis, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, Hermes, and Hades. So in other words, there are 13... But there's a reason, because there was originally 12. Because Hades' cabin got destroyed.
Okay.
Is that what you're talking about?
No. Because there are 13 original Greek gods in.
Yeah, but I got it right though. Huh.
Well, you kind of got around there in a roundabout way, but that's the influence that number has, right? Because that number 13 for the Greek gods, which might be where the gardening comes from, is it traces itself back to Greece, right? So there are 13 Olympians, right?
And I can name all of them for you if you want.
Do you know who Judas is?
Yes.
Who's Judas?
He parted wait, did he part the Red Sea?
No,
that was Moses. That was Moses.
So who is Judas?
I've heard of him, but I don't know who.
Other than my favorite part to sing in Jesus Christ Superstar, who is Jesus? Who is Judas? My mind is clearer now. At last.
He is a Jesus disciple.
He is a disciple of Jesus. He is the person who is known for having betrayed Judas.
Yeah, he's the one that's like, haha, betray.
I'm not sure he said haha before he did it.
He probably did.
But it's said that he was the 13th guest at the Last Supper.
Christian.
And so that's kind of where it comes from. I mean, like I said, this is a Western, you have to keep in mind, most Western ideas are going to be Christian ideas. Except our good friend Loki.
Yes! Loki! Loki!
You can't yell that loud. Oh my word. She's a big fan of Loki.
I love Loki.
So it is said that.
Say so much, though.
No, it's okay. It said that Loki was the 13th guest at his first appearance among the gods.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big. It was basically like a perfect world, right? Like so, imagine it's like Eden, but on a godlike level, not humans. And Loki was the 13th guest, and by coming and being the 13th guest, he introduced evil and turmoil into the entire world.
And he is the trickster god.
He is the trickster god. He's the god of mischief, right? And so those guests, right, have kind of pushed forward this idea that 13 is an unlucky number, and this idea of, there's something wrong with that number. There's something messed up about it. Now, it's not all cultures, right? So the Chinese actually believe it's a lucky number. The Japanese believe it's a lucky number. But in Western society, which obviously we're in a Western society, these are some of the ideas that they have. Now, where does Friday the 13th come in? Well, believe it or not, back in the day, like at the turn of the 1900s, they said that Friday was the worst day of the week. I know, right? They even had a phrase that was called Friday face. And Friday face we might think of as like that look you have on Monday morning when you have to go in. So Friday was the worst day of the week.
Why? Because you had to come home from school?
I'm sure things were set up much different. I'm not sure how much formal schooling there was in the early 1900s. But in 1907, a guy by the name of Thomas Larson wrote a fiction book where he, on Friday the 13th, by profession, this guy was really a stockbroker and was like, they said he was almost mythical and mystical in his ideas about the stock market. Like the guy can make anyone money. And he wrote a fictional book where the main character was a stockbroker who intentionally took down the entire United States by crashing the stock market intentionally on Friday the 13th. And so the book was popular enough that it actually had this sense of like foreboding of like, wait a minute, is this thing going to actually happen? Is he predicting it? And then the last thing, do you know who the Knights Templar are?
I've heard of them.
You've heard of them? They kind of, especially in modern times, permeate a lot of our culture. They are originally they were warrior monks, right? So they were kind of like priests. They were monks who went over during the Crusades and fought the Muslims and were like the fiercest warriors that you could imagine. When they came back after that, they were accused because they were becoming so powerful, depending on what you believe. Because they were becoming so powerful, the Catholic Church started to make up lies about them. And because of that, they kind of disgraced them, and they ended up invading their temple and wiping out the Knight Templars on Friday the 13th, 1307. And so a lot of people feel that this Friday the 13th is actually a Templar curse, because the Templars have a lot to do with the Freemasons and the Da Vinci Code, and it's believed that they have the Knight Templars actually had the what do they call that? The Holy Grail. That they actually found the Holy Grail when they were invading into Islamic territory. So that's the number 13. Does that make you more or less scared to know that it's pretty much just like a random thing and that it actually has no power?
I have not been afraid of Friday or like 13 in any way.
No, really?
No, I'm not afraid of 13.
Okay, what number are you scared of? Are you scared of the number 4?
No.
No?
No.
In Chinese culture, the number 4 is considered the most unlucky number.
Why?
I'm glad you asked. Because the way you pronounce 4 in Chinese is almost the same word as death.
Ah.
So it has nothing to do with numerology. It has nothing to do with sacredness. It has to do with...
so if I say 4 in Chinese, I'll go...
Well, right, but you have to learn Chinese first.
I can learn Chinese.
And the same goes true for 9 in Japanese. 9 in Japanese.
Give me a hot second here.
Coup. So I guess it's coup. She's saying it's coup. Coup, if she's getting it right, means torture or suffering.
Oh, that sucks.
Right? It's close to the word that means torture or suffering. So those numbers are considered to be cursed or to be unlucky because of that. 17 in some Western cultures is considered unlucky because the Roman numerals for 17, if you rearrange them, they spell out "my life is over."
Oh, sucks to suck, man.
Yeah,
Sucks
no,
to suck.
I'm with you on that. Other numbers that are kind of so. Do you know who Pythagorean is?
Yes.
Pythagorean is reason why we have a lot of the math that we have, but also our concepts, our modern concepts, Western concepts of numbers and their meaning. So tell us who Pythagorean is, or if at least if you can tell us the Pythagorean theorem, that'll give you some credit in your math class. Yeah.
Like what? Can you give me like an example?
No, like Pythagorean's theorem is like a famous
Is it like
geometric.
It's like the 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 5.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, you know that?
Yeah.
Have you heard that before? Okay, obviously not taking geometry this year.
I'm in 6th grade.
All right, whatever. You should know it anyway. Your dad taught math. Maybe I should have Devin come out and he can tell it to me. So Pythagoras was actually considered like a prophet, right? Then the ideas that he had about triangles and kind of the power of numbers was followed by a lot of people, and it was called Pythagoreanism. And it was people really followed this. And in his world, 1 meant unity, 2 and every other even number represented the female, 3 represented males and odd, and all the odd numbers, and then 5 represented marriage because it was it was actually like the mixture of 2 and 3. Make sense? 2 plus 3 is 5. So maybe 5 is an unlucky number because the moral of the story is.
Did I just say that? Don't follow.
Don't follow.
Didn't I just say like 1, 1, 2, 3, 5?
Yeah, like there's a whole thing.
8.
What's the next number you want to explore?
3.
No, we're doing 3 last. Other than 3, what's the next number you want to explore? 11, 11?
7, 7, 7.
7, 7, 7.
Or just 7 in general.
7 in general. So, why is 7 considered a sacred number? So, I did a lot of research on this, mainly because we'll do 7 and 6 together. How about that? 7 is considered the perfect number, right? In some cultures, which we'll get into, 12 is the perfect number. But especially when it comes to the Bible, the perfect number is supposed to be 7, right? I tried to figure out exactly why this is. And if I've got numerologists, and if I've got people who know more than this, because I wasn't able to get too much into this, but I think I have the idea of why. Jesus is considered the perfect. His representation is 8.
Wait, I know.
And so what? What were you gonna say?
I know why 7's
All right, go ahead.
Because 7, 8, 9.
All right, that was a dad joke. That was a complete dad joke. But it's kind of like that same thing, right? So 1 less than that because the world can't. We'll get to the 0s and 1s. Trust me.
Binary.
I think it has something to do with the 7 days of the week, right? And the 7 days of the week being the earth and therefore the perfect creation. And 7 being kind of a numerical equivalent of perfection, right? God created a perfect world, and therefore 7 is the perfect number because that's the number of days he took, right? Because it represents all of the hard work and everything, and then the day of rest, and then there you go, right? And so then Jesus, who has to be more perfect than the earth, right, is 8. And then the next number is one less than it, so the imperfect number is 6.
The
so
number of Satan.
yeah, so 6 and the number 666, and we're going to talk about 3 a little bit, and the holiness and the sacredness of 3. And how these two might kind of interact a little bit, because obviously when you start getting into this, you can dig really deep, right? You can dig really deep, and there's a lot of numerology and things you can do like that, which, we could do 3 shows just on that part of things, and that's not really what we do because we're talking about folklore. But 6 is the imperfect number, right? And therefore, the representation of that. Now, one of the things we're going to get into when we get into 3 a little bit is this idea of the Trinity, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost,
Father, Son,
right?
Holy Ghost.
Or the Holy Spirit, depending on which way you roll. So the 3 6s of the imperfection represent the manipulation or the twisting of those things, right? And so it represents the unholy Trinity, and so therefore there are 3 6s.
Because 3 is supposed to be mocking the Holy Trinity.
Right, because 3, part of what we're talking about is 3 being like the
death number, the curse number, and it's like, well, not really, like 3 and 6 are like
are the big ones, right?
The big ones, yeah.
So 6 is one of the things that we're going to talk about is the halfness of things as well, right? So if you think about a clock, there are 12, half of it is 6. And therefore, that represents like a weird manipulation of perfection. Once again, like a cutting of half. In the Revelations, where the number 666 is first kind of used, is the 66th book of the Bible. Did you know that? No. Did you learn that in your classes?
No, not yet.
No, you taking off for a little bit or something? You
no,
like going over there?
Like
it is the 18th verse, where the number of the beast is mentioned. So 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6.
I see. That's very clever, Jesus. Very clever. I see you.
And so this number 6 has prevailed. Now, here's the interesting thing, is that we think of it as a Catholic. I'm not sure if it's so much non-Catholic Christians have that same obsession with the number 6, and specifically 666. But there are some interesting things I found out. I'm going to read this. I know reading on air is horrible, but the best known instance of numerology is the number of the beast, 666.
Can I read it?
From the biblical revelation to John in 13:18. Curiously, Revelation is the 66th book in the Bible, and the number of the beast occurs in verse 18. But here's where it gets kind of weird and something that I didn't know. But who is the beast? So we've talked about how 3 represents Jesus, 6 represents the Antichrist, right? But that's not, and this kind of goes with how you can play numerology the way you want. The German Protestant scholar Andreas Legwig in 1812, notice all the 6s in there, added up the Roman numerals in the phrase Vicarium Filii Dei, or Vicar of the Son of God, a title falsely ascribed to the Pope, and omitted all the other letters, and he came up with the number 666, hence proving that the beast, or the Antichrist, is actually the Roman Catholic Church itself. That's pretty controversial, but he was a Protestant, remember. This interpretation was taken up by some Seventh-day Adventists in the 19th century, but the same method applies to the name Ellen Gould White, a founder of the Seventh-day Adventists, also yields 666, providing that the W's count as 2 V's. Hitler sums to 666 if one uses the code A equals 100, B is 101, and so on. 2 16th century numerologists were Michael Stiefel and Peter Bungus. Stiefel decoded 666 as Pope Leo X, and Bungus as Martin Luther. Not coincidentally, Stiefel was a Protestant theologian and Bungus a Catholic. So it's one of those things. The reason why I read that is this idea that we often use numbers to kind of mean what we want them to mean. And then when we go searching for it, so one of the things that is like famous is the whole thing between Kennedy and Abraham Lincoln.
No, no.
Okay, everyone else who's listening knows it, but that's okay.
Just sum it up.
So sum it up. Well, I'm glad you asked, Ella. So some of the things, and some of these I can just recite off the top of my head, but so for example, Kennedy had if I'm getting it right, like Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln, and Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy. And they were both killed in 1963. And they were both killed the year before an election. And they were both killed. One was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, and the other one by John Wilkes Booth. Right? So there's all of these kind of like weird connections like that.
What's the connection between James Wilkes Booth and
John Wilkes Booth?
Yeah, him.
Well, just the three names.
Oh.
Right? But there's a lot of numerology in that as well. I'll post a posting just about this, so we don't have to talk about it in depth. But like when you add the dates that they were killed and the number of letters in each of their names are the same and all these like weird numerical things. But it's one of those things where people just play with the numbers the way they want to play with them, right? They have them and they just kind of roll with it.
And each of them has 7 letters.
See, she was doing the counting in her head, you weirdo. 1111.
We already talked about 1111.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
We really didn't.
We talked about it like an hour ago.
We really didn't.
Yeah, we did.
So the important part of 1111 that I want to communicate, it does have something to do with like coding, right? Like what's her name? VK said that zeros and ones for the code of the matrix, or just numerical code, like ones and zeros are binary code, and the 1111 represents kind of a binary sequence.
Yeah, like what's 111?
But the idea is 1111 is supposed to be the symbol of awakening, right? So when and we always talk about hashtag follow the signs. When you see 1111, it's supposed to be either your spirit guides or your even loved ones who have passed trying to get in touch with you, trying to give you a sign. Have you ever felt like a loved one who's passed has tried to contact you?
Yes.
Who?
Grandma Louise.
Who?
Louise.
Louise? Of all the people, Grandma Louise?
I think so, yeah.
Why is that? She doesn't know. So oftentimes, if you get 1111, which is also a coded
creepy grandma
molecular,
that we found on my bed?
that was very
really
creepy.
Weird.
It's supposed to represent that angels are close by, that angels are trying to work through you, that they want you to pay attention to the things around you because you're about to manifest. If you can kind of catch those signs, that you're going to manifest something. You're going to manifest what you're looking for, your desires. The date 1111, so tomorrow to 111, represents what's known as the Divine Trinity. It's a time of enlightenment. So it's a time when you can actually have this kind of spiritual awakening.
Wait, I know who's trying to contact me. The host of Jeopardy.
I don't think so, because that was just yesterday.
I know, Dad. I'm joking.
And the most important one, like I said, is loved ones are trying to send you a message. So a loved one is trying to speak to you, and you have to open yourself up. So if you are seeing 1111 often, that probably means that a loved one is trying to communicate with you to get you to open up the doorway for all this other enlightenment and stuff like that. Go ahead.
So today on my math thingy, my math teacher has a whiteboard.
Yeah.
And he writes the date and the day it is, like an odd or even day. And today instead of 11/10, it said 11/11/20. Like the person
Really?
Yeah, the person didn't do the right date.
Why not?
I don't know.
Drugs?
No. Coincidence?
Hashtag follow the signs. 3.
3.
3.
3.
3.
3.
I want to start off 3 by saying this. We were going through this book.
Book. I love that.
And you know, if you take this part out and you just read it, I was actually talking on air on a show about this. I need to so I can see it. A guide to summoning spirits, divining the future, and invoking the supernatural. This is kind of why this book is really a dangerous book that we didn't explore as much as we should have, except for as stories. We didn't actually do most of the things that are in there.
Can I put one out?
But 3, we will. 3 has a lot to do with, I think, the duality of things, right? So, for example, you have man and woman. You have the yin and the yang. You have the light and the dark. You have all these things that represent the power of 2, right? And the idea of the sacredness of it, I believe, really comes from this idea that, or this notion that man is in the middle of those things. I know this is not necessarily the most popular opinion, but I think that it has to do with choices, right? It has to do with the yin and the yang. It has to do with finding balance, the thing in the middle, finding the balance. But in a bigger sense, I think there's just something natural about 3. And I think we tap into that natural rhythm of 3. We have the 3 fates, right? We have the pyramids and the triangle itself being the first really true geometric form. If you ain't got a third leg, you can't stand something up. You have this idea of, I want to know if you know these. Do you know the 3 laws of motion, Newton's 3 laws of motion?
Kinetic? He's like, no. Gravity?
No.
Kinetic?
He did discover gravity, or talk about
Discover gravity?
Well, yeah, because it fell on his head. You have the idea of heaven, earth, and hell, right? You have the idea of in Olympus, right? You have Olympus, and then Earth, and then Hades, right?
The big 3.
You have obviously we talked about the Holy Trinity. We talked about the unholy Trinity.
The sky, the sea, the underworld.
The sky, the sea, the underworld. You've got the 3 gods of Hindu. Do you know the 3 gods of Hindu?
No.
Oh, I totally thought you would. You have the Brahma, who's the creator god, Vishnu, who is the reality god, and then Shiva, which is the destruction god. Mm-hmm. And then Shiva is where we get the concept of a third eye, right? Ah. And the third eye being the eye to enlightenment. And then, of course, you have the idea that you can't build something without a 3, right? Like if you do, it's slanted. So if you want something to be even, you need to have 2 sides and then a thing over it. In Buddhism, you have Amitabha, who is the infinite light, the Buddha of infinite light, right? And this is an important concept in Buddhism. But then he has 2 buddies, wisdom and compassion, right? But where does this come from? Some people say that there's actually a biological reason for it as well, right? So have you studied biology yet? Like DNA and stuff?
No, but I know about like dominant and like that.
Okay. So DNA, the 3 kind of building blocks of creatures, of all living things, is DNA, RNA, and proteins. Right? So 3. DNA consists of these triplets, right? And they're 3-lettered codons formed by 3 nucleotides. So even within the biology of all living things is this number 3. The number 3 keeps coming up. And I think it's the idea of pattern, right? Like I've talked about this a lot in terms of the Bridgewater Triangle, in terms of other projects that involve triangles. This idea that you can have a coincidence, but when it happens 3 times, now it's a thing, right? So for example, if you have 2 points, they're just 2 points. If you add a 3rd point, then all of a sudden you can connect them, right? So you have our mind almost needing 3 repetitions to create a pattern, to create stability. You can't have, if we had books here, we do have books here, but like you have 2, it's not going to fit. You have 3, you've got a side, you've got a top, it creates a structure, it creates
Like this.
something, and therefore, like this, like the tripod we're literally using for the microphone. It creates some kind of stability. Other than that, you have chaos. And so this number 3 has been borrowed, and we talked about 3 being a perfect number in the Bible. We will, hon. Don't worry about it. I know you're anxious because you're like, let's get to that part.
I like this game.
The important part for us is that this number 3 builds recognition. It borrows from the sacredness of the Bible, of the Vendis, I know the Vegas. It borrows from all of these religious traditions because it exists naturally in nature. Naturally, can you say naturally in nature?
Naturally.
It exists naturally. And therefore, it is the most common number and the most common pattern that we see. And there's this magical part of it. 27 is my favorite number, and that's 3 cubed, 3 to the third for those non-mathematicians in the audience. And it appears, of all the numbers we've talked about tonight, it appears the most frequently in folklore. Ella, I'm going to let you get to your story because you're anxious to do it. And this is one of those 3 connections, and then we're going to talk about the 3 connections.
There's like 5 billion 3 connections.
There really is, or like how that 3 has evolved when it comes to folklore. Go ahead, kiddo.
Okay, so this specific one that I chose is one of my personal favorites. It's called the hosting game, and it's basically like you summon these guests to a party, and you're the host of the party.
What?
Yeah, you're having a party with the ghosts, but you can't look at the ghosts, so they go away.
Okay, that's my kind of party.
Right?
Come to my party, then get away.
But the connection to 3 is that you have to have 3 matches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is if you strike the match, strike the first match, right? If it lights immediately, say hello, welcome, like greet your guest kindly. If it doesn't light on the first strike, drop it immediately. Light the second match. If it lights immediately, greet your guests. Doesn't light, drop it. Strike the third match, and if it lights on the first strike, be like, okay, everyone's here, now we can start. And if you you blow it out after 10 seconds, right? And
that's a long time to hold a match,
right? Or you blow it out for 10 seconds. And listen carefully. If you hear whispering, saying thank you and stuff, they're having a marvelous time or something. And when the party's ending time comes, be like, thank you for coming again, goodbye. Don't ask them to come again soon. Don't do that.
Did they bring their own food and chips and
Probably.
stuff? Okay.
If the third match does not light on the first strike, however, that's very bad. It means you have uninvited guests. Run to the nearest light source that is not in the hosting room. You did make note of where it is, right? As fast as you can and turn it on immediately. Do not look behind you, do not turn around, do not attempt to close the door to the hosting room. Get to the light switch as fast as possible. Once the light has been turned on, it's safe to turn around, but be careful in dark from here on out, particularly when you're alone. You may not actually be alone as you think.
So, if there is...
I love this book because it makes it sound a lot creepier than it is.
If any of that stuff happened, it would be creepy. Like 1111, once again, VK saying, when you keep on seeing 11, it's an angel number. Everywhere, rejoice, because joy and happiness are coming your way, and your guardian angel's there. And it's tied to positive ideas of the afterlife, both angels and your loved ones. 3 has had a really weird journey the last 15, 20 years, where this idea of it really, really being strong in terms of religion, Jesus, those kind of things, has been manipulated to be evil, right? So even in that, those are guesses you don't want.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Light. And you have to light it 3 times to get it done and all these things. And so there's a pattern in modern folklore of 3 being a really negative number, right? And 3 being a witch number.
11.
Yep, right there. Of it being a cursed number, of it being a bastardization of the Christian number 3 to be used for evil, right? So 1111 has the same kind of connotations as some of this. For example, if you hear, and this has happened to me twice here, and it was actually, like I said, the spark of tripping on legends was 3 knocks on the door, right? If you get 3 knocks on the door, now the folklore varies, but if you hear 3 knocks on the door and there's no one there,
Dad.
either you're
Stop.
Someone's trying to communicate with you, or someone in the house is going to die, and like death is coming
Dad,
to like check on them.
Stop.
Well, when was the last time you heard 3 knocks on the front door and there was no one there?
When I tell you to knock on the front door, so I know it's you.
Also, you're supposed to knock on the door 3 times to let the midnight man in, right?
Yeah. Shh. Please stop.
Part of this,
scaring me.
part of the modern day ones, and it goes back, right? Like you have the 3 little pigs, you have Cinderella and her 2 stepsisters, you have Tritons, right? You have the idea. See the Triton? That's why I wore this hat tonight. You also have, in modern times, this idea of the witching hour. So the smallest a coven can be is 3, right? And you have to polka knocks 3 times. Excellent. You have this concept that, in terms of witches, that you have to have at least 3 to make it a coven, right? 1, it's just a spooky old witch. 2, it's just 2 old ladies bitching and moaning together. 3, you got a coven. So obviously to my witch friends, I'm joking about it, but the idea is solid what I'm saying. You have to do that. Now, 4 is great to call to the winds and things like that, but 3 is the beginning number. 3 witches in Shakespeare, right? In Macbeth.
Don't say that.
Hence, 3 contributes, maybe because of the witches. 3 contributes to the idea of the witching hour. So that idea of a coven, the size of the smallest coven. But also, think of a clock, right? So a clock, 360 degrees, it's divided by 3, right? Like 360, it's 12, 12, 12. Like the hours of a day are split up into 3s, right? 12, so, like, boom, right? Into little segments of 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Traditionally, people went to bed early and they got up at midnight. Did you know this? Mm-hmm. Right? And they got up and they spent 3 hours doing stuff and then went back to bed at 3. And so that was the prime time for witches, folklore belief, for witches to come out and mess with them. So you hold those 2 things. And then, of course, the third thing is this idea that Jesus died between the hours of 12 and 3. And, of course, that's appropriate with him being the trilogy, right? The Trinity, rather. So you have this concept.
He's part of the Trinity.
Huh?
He's part of the Trinity.
Right.
He's not.
But that 3 being essential. Also, like 3 things to form the cross. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, and then him the third. So you've got the what do you call it? Crucifix. This idea that the reverse of that, so the bastardization, the evilness of it, is actually, flip it, is 3 in the morning. And that's why it's the witching hour. So you have all of these ideas that have led to 3 going out into other parts of pop culture and folklore being the dominant number. So you have, when are you supposed to do Bloody Mary now?
3.
When are you supposed to conjure the Midnight Man?
3. Or midnight.
Midnight. And when are you safe?
3.
3:33.
3:33.
Right? So I even said this to my students today. I was just kind of talking, and they were like, yeah, man, no, 3, like 3 is the weirdest number. It's an evil number. We don't do things in 3. Don't even make groups of 3, Mr. Balzano. Like, don't even do it. It's this idea that there is something evil in that because there's been taken by forces this kind of symbol of what has been purity in all these different cultures and even biologically in us. And it's been manipulated and turned evil. But I think that's also because it's a very natural force. So yes, I don't know anyone in the paranormal who was doing quiet time or dead time or whatever it was called. I don't know anyone that was taking the witching hour and using the witching hour in paranormal investigations before paranormal state. Maybe they were. I was, essentially studying investigators at that time as well as being an investigator myself. We never found any special need to do things at 3. After that, it's like an essential thing, right? All of your folklore, all the stories in there, you have to do it at 3, right? Or 3:33. It's this like mythical thing that wasn't really in existence until modern times. That bastardization of it, that creepiness factor of it. Can you think of any other 3s?
The Heathers.
What do you mean? Talk about the Heathers. I don't know the Heathers.
The Heathers. You don't know the Heathers?
No. You mean like in the movie Heathers?
Yes, like in the movie Heathers, there's 3 of them.
There's
and
4 of them.
There's 3. There's technically 3.
4 of them.
There's technically
4
3.
of them.
Veronica doesn't count. She's not an actual Heather because her name isn't Heather.
So, okay. Then you have
You're
like that natural pattern that appears, right? Like, so you need those 3 people to form a group.
And the plastics.
The plastics are also 3. And then the 4th one doesn't fit in, right? Isn't that like kind of the essence of all of these things?
That's like the whole thing is that like the 4th one wants to be a part of the group, but she just doesn't really fit in.
It's impenetrable fortress. And what do we say? I mean, this is the number 1 rule. If you are a parent out there and you're a new parent, here is like this flies in the face of all folklore. But reinforces the idea of 3 as now being evil, or at least somewhat being evil. Never have 3 people at a sleepover or 3 kids gathered together.
Oh.
2 will always turn against 1, right? If you have 4, maybe nothing will happen. Maybe they'll form like 2 and 2s, like pair off. 3 is the worst. So if you're ever going to have a sleepover or just people hanging out, never have 3. Have 2 or 4 and more. Never have 3.
I have 3.
You never have 3.
Yeah, for my birthday, it was me, Morgan, and Chloe.
And how'd that go?
Well, Chloe like ignored us the whole time.
See what I'm saying? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you think you're going to get more at 3 o'clock, you get more at 3 o'clock. If you think you need to, if you think that random knocking is 3 knocks, then something bad happens and you see it. I'm not sure the power that number has. I want to be convinced by a numerologist who can look at things in folklore and be able to break them down and say, this is what it is. Boom, 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 boom. And offer proof of that. I would love to see that. Can you do that? No, you can't, because you're not a numerologist. Nor are
I'm 11.
Nor are you a pyramidologist or a Pythagoreanist or a Pythagorean. I think we need to put a cap on this for right now.
Okay.
I'm kind of going to be posting some of my favorite 3 folklores because it happens a lot, right? That idea of like it comes once, it comes twice, and then the 3rd time is the thing. I'm going to post some of those in the coming week. So by the time you guys hear this on podcast, it's all going to be up on the social media. So you can actually see those posts and see kind of these connections to different folklore if you follow us on social media. Because we are at Twitter on...
Spooky Tripping.
Spooky Balzano. Excellent.
Balzano, that one.
We're on Instagram at...
Spooky Tripping.
Excellent. SpookyTripping@gmail.com is also our email. No one ever emails. Facebook.com/trippingonlegends. Facebook.com/thisTownIsMyth are excellent ways to get in touch with us as well. You can go to midnight.fm
where it's always midnight
to not only get this show, but also to get some of the other great things. I was on Haunted Librarian last week. It's amazing. Of course, Midnight Society with Tim Weisberg, which is right after this show. And I don't know if you know this, Elle, because this is what I'm getting you for Christmas, but you can actually get a subscription to Midnight FM, which actually gives you access to old shows. You can actually do all of Midnight Society, all of Haunted Librarian, all of Rift Paranormal, like these really good shows that they have on there. You can actually subscribe and get them for free. Well, not for free, but you have full access to them. Isn't that amazing? I can see you're really excited about that. However, if you want to get old episodes of Tripping on Legends, even ones where Ella stays awake the entire time. See, it's a trick because I give her sleepy time tea, and then the trick is to see whether she can make it through the entire show. And so she always, the last 20 minutes, starts to hit her a little bit.
Drugs.
You can get all of our old podcasts pre-Ella as well as post-Ella anywhere you get your podcast. And please rate the show.
I shall always
the reviews are coming in for Haunted Florida Love Stories. Not all good. But we're also getting reviews for a few reviews in the last couple weeks for the radio show. So we'd love to have you go to iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher, wherever you get your stuff, and leave a review for the show as well. So keep in contact with us. There's a ton of ways to get in touch with us. Please make sure that you are giving us all of your greatest legends and commenting on some of the ones we have as well. Sometimes during the live feed, I can't comment on everything that's going on because it knocks off my mojo as well as my momentum. But I do want to hear these things, and I usually go back and try to respond. So I am Christopher Balzano.
And I'm Ella Balzano.
For Tripping on Legends, and here's hoping. Here's
All
hoping.
your trips.
Wait, Kate. This time I want to say legendary, so you say.
All trips.
No, here's hoping.
All your trips.
No, you do the whole thing, and I'll say the ending.
Here's hoping all your trips
Are legendary. I want to play this song.
Taking a hot second.
I want to play the song.